So we do welcome you. Anyway, so I'm going to call our meeting to order, and if I could bother everyone to join me for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Start with roll call, please, Abby.
Yes. Wilkins?
Here.
Post?
Here.
Rice?
Here.
Bunce?
Here.
Bosher? Bauman?
Here.
Fent? And Putvin.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if everybody had a chance here to look at this evening's agenda here again for October 23rd, 2023.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Perfect. Roll, please.
Putvin?
Yes.
Bauman?
Yes.
Bunce?
Yes.
Rice?
Yes.
Filkins?
Yes.
Post?
Yes.
Thank you.
For those that watch us, we have not been here. Our last meeting was May 31st of 2023. So, in case you missed us, that's why we weren't here. So based on reading that and bringing you up to speed, members have time to read the minutes from then.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Mr. Bauman. Roll, please.
Bauman?
Yes.
Bunce?
Yes.
Filkins?
Yes.
Post?
Yes.
Rice?
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this evening, which you guys are probably aware, we're here for a public hearing on a special land use application filed by Kelly Dunseth and Gaines Brown to allow for a boarding house at 434 East Chapin Street. Having read that, Mr. Wallace,
Yes, I'll give a
start or
I'll give a presentation, and then if the applicant wanted to cover some things that maybe I missed,
Sure.
she'd be welcome to do that, and then I think we could follow with the public hearing.
okay.
I have my PowerPoint, which I'll go over a lot of the key issues in terms of the surroundings and the site and so forth. I haven't sought to put all the detail in my staff report into the slides because we'd be reading all night. But at least I'll get through the major visual parts, and then we can talk about some of the other pieces later. As mentioned, the applicant is Kelly Dunseth and Gaines Brown, and the requested use is a boarding house. The subject property is located at 434 East Chapin, just northeast of Rush Street, parcel number 10-082-00-305-00. This home has historically been used as a single-family home. The property is currently zoned R3. The home has 3,082 square feet of living space and has 3 stories plus a basement. They are converting one of the rooms into a second full bathroom in the home, so there will be 2 full baths. The lot size is 7,405 feet, which meets the minimum lot requirement, and the lot is pictured below. On the left, you have a visual of what the house looks like from the front facade from the street, and you have the aerial photo of the subject site outlined in yellow on the right. Some of the basics of the proposed special land use. It will be proposed to be a boarding house. There are proposed 4 tenants plus an on-site manager. The tenants would have a minimum of a 3-month minimum lease period. The focus of tenant recruitment is for students from Baker College, young people looking for homes close to employment, prospective newcomers, and recovering addicts. The parking setup for the proposal is that the manager would park in the garage. The tenant parking spaces, of which each tenant would be limited to 1 vehicle. would be in spaces off the alley. There would be 4 spaces created off the alley, and I will have a graphic of that in a little bit. And the visitor parking would just take place in the main driveway. In addition to the application, the applicant has also submitted a management plan which gives much of the detail on how the operation is supposed to be managed and operated, and also a draft lease for coordination between what they're proposing in the lease and then also what's in the management plan. This just gives you the various floor plans. You can see the different room types. I think in the first story, there's really it doesn't seem to be any living quarters, kitchen, dining area, living room, hallway, foyer, and so forth. Second level, looks like there are 4 bedrooms on the second level. One is showing a full bath, and I don't know if it's a room on this floor or the next floor, which is being converted into the second full bath.
The first floor.
Oh, the first floor?
Yes, sir.
So which room on
Is the office here?
the office would be turned into a full bath? Okay,
We acquired the permits too.
okay. And then the final bedroom is on the third level, and you can see that there's also an office there located there as well. The parking plan, like I had said earlier, you see in the garage it's stated that it's for management parking. 4 parking spaces would be proposed off the alleyway. They would be to one side of the telephone pole, which is located also just off the alley in the back. And of course, the visitor parking would take place in the driveway in front of the garage. To give you some idea of adjacent land uses, this is the house to the east of 434. You can see that the homes on this block seem to take up a majority of the lot width. Kind of smaller lots, 50-foot lots, but tend to be kind of larger homes. This is the housing to the west of 434 East Chapin. Gives you an idea of the different styles and sizing of the homes. And this is the housing across the street from 434. Again, a lot of different housing types in terms of architectural style and sizing, but it gives you a feel for what's happening in the immediate neighborhood. The zoning district where this is proposed is the R3 district. Homes in this area tend to be mid-sized to larger homes. There are no proposed changes to the exterior of the home or garage. There is a proposed 4-car parking lot proposed off the alley. Originally, when I did this, it was proposed to be gravel. Is that still the proposal?
We actually were quoted for cement as well. We were just looking to get some information here.
Okay. So that issue of whether paved or gravel would also have to be addressed. There are 8 properties on the current block, not necessarily on the same side of the block, but on both sides of the block. There are 5 paved parking lots off the alley, and there are 3 gravel parking lots off the alley. We just checked on that recently. I had here 7, but we did a double check and it was 8. We were originally working off the aerial photo. This has been updated with the new graphic. This is actually the area where the parking area would be. You can see the telephone pole to the right, and the 4 parking spaces would have to be fit between the garage and the telephone pole. The land is sloped towards the home. I'm recommending in my staff report that ultimately, if you're going to allow any approval, that the parking area be reviewed for its design and its pavement status, and whether it needs to be leveled out, and also that it would address where the drainage from that parking would be, and that would be different whether it was paved or whether it was gravel. Gravel, some will soak into the ground. With the pavement, there will be a more direct runoff with the pavement. I think I addressed some of this. The telephone pole complicating the plan. I think that's been addressed in the current revision to the parking. Let's see. Yeah, the final point is the only one I think I haven't mentioned. There could be a conflict between the parking for the manager in the garage and the visitor parking, which is proposed for the driveway. I'm not aware of exactly to the extent that there may be visitor parking, but there is potential if they park in the main drive. If he's in the garage, there could be some need to do some car swapping to leave the site, and the applicant could maybe address that when she comes after mine. I'm suggesting that the applicant should submit a detailed site plan for the parking area. I know that she has already started talking with the city's engineer. I don't know how far they are in that process, but at least that communication has been started. The plan should include the location of the telephone pole, which it now does. The distances between the telephone pole and the side lot line should be given, and the width of the parking spaces. I believe that's all been done. I'm suggesting that the parking pad be made to be more level and likely would require a retaining wall, but I will defer to the city engineer on that question. And also that the parking pad should require the approval of the city engineer and the Department of Public Works, in that they take care of and manage the alleyway. The applicant did submit a rather detailed boarding house management plan. That's quite lengthy and covers a lot of detail. Hopefully you've all had the chance to read through that, and maybe at a later time in the meeting you'll have a question. If you have questions on confirming some of the points that are in that plan, you could address those later. Also, consistency with the special use standards. I think I went through and tried to address those special use standards. To me, I think, it's kind of a close call, and I think you could technically find that they do meet or do not meet based on your individual opinions on some of the potential impacts and how the individual details of certain things may end up being decided from the management plan. So I didn't see a clear path to saying this easily meets the standards or doesn't meet the standards. I thought it was just going to be a subjective call. There were no specific standards in the ordinance to meet for a boarding house, which were specified specifically for a boarding house. After the public hearing, and the Planning Commission may approve the application, approve with conditions, or deny the special land use application. Another option, if for some reason the additional information may be desired, you could also choose to table if you needed more time to look at additional things or gain additional information. If the Planning Commission should wish to deny the application, such denial should be based on the belief that the application fails to meet one of the special use standards, and also can consider public input. If the Planning Commission should wish to approve the application, I think the following issues should be addressed. The proposed parking area, design, material, and how it should be reviewed. The subject of how visitors are handled number, duration of stay, also visitor parking. That the second full bathroom should be completed before any occupancy, if you should approve. And probably there should be some determination of how the maintenance of the home and the property will be handled, whether that'll be done by the owner or someone else, and whether that will be done, on a routine basis, or how that will be handled. I think those are the issues that I thought at a minimum should be addressed. And of course, you may have your own issues or things that you might want to add as additional conditions if you chose to approve the application. Also, talking about how the enforcement of house management plan would be done by the manager and the owners, how that relationship between site manager and owner will work. Enforcement by the city that all operation plans are followed and conditions set by the planning commission are met. And I think there should be an understanding too, should the property be sold. I think it's my understanding that the special use permit would run with the land. And so I think any kind of sale, I think if it was going to be a sale into the same use, I think the same terms would be in effect. And should be an understanding that is the case. I imagine someone who wanted to convert it back on a future sale could probably do so, but I think there should be a formal revocation of the special use permit if someone chose not to continue this particular use. And the final thing is how the final rooms might be utilized in the home. Typically under our rental inspection program, we are in the home every 3 years. In some cases, we've had trouble in the past with rooms in homes, additional rooms or apartment units beyond what were approved end up being used. We would just like to have some kind of maybe assurance or how that we could know that additional rooms beyond the proposed manager and 4 tenants wasn't happening on the site. And I believe, that is all the issues that I had. And if I've missed anything, Kelly Jo Dunseth is here. And if you wanted to maybe fill in some things that I might have missed, you could do so now. You could go up to the...
Please make sure you're at the microphone so we can hear you for later minutes.
Hi guys, I'm Kelly.
Good evening.
Nice to meet you all. Just a couple of things that you had mentioned with the parking. We've had a few contractors out there to talk about leveling the lot in the back. I've been speaking with quite a few of the people on the city board, like Connie and Jim and Bert, just about like the different options we have for planning the parking lot. The space there is wide enough to accommodate 4 parking spaces at the minimum of 9 feet in width each, as I show on the diagram there. But there is options to pull in ahead of the pole as well to allow for more room, but it'll ultimately be leveled down. I think we're leaning more towards cement at this point. And then it would be drained onto the grassy area with the trees, so we won't have any drainage going onto other neighboring properties. The visitors, the driveway, I know it's directly in front of the garage, so there's not a lot of room for, like, people can't move around each other. But visitors would be, they're not going to be a thing that's going to be very common. They're not going to be staying for longer than like 3-day periods or every other week. So in the event that we do have visitors and that's not enough, we also have a city public parking lot that's 2 blocks down near the church, if there was any more issues with that. As well as like the street parking in the summer and then the 3 car lengths if it was needed. The bathroom we've acquired the permits for. That's in the process of being done currently. It should be done within a couple weeks at most. And then with the level of maintenance, so with the manager living there and making sure that all the rules are being followed, that's also listed in the management plan and the lease agreement. Just showing that he's basically there to do just that, having someone living on the grounds, making sure there's not like 2 people living in one room. If we wanted to have couples, we could make sure that they rent maybe 2 separate bedrooms and maybe at a lower rate, but there would still only be 1 parking space per each of the 5 people that would be living there. Yeah, apart from that, I think it's just a really important type of housing that's sorely needed in this place, especially with like the younger people that are struggling to make, you know, they got to have like 3 different friends to get into these single family homes that are, you know, $1,200, $1,500 a month, first month and last, and then they have security deposits as well. So having something that's more like $600 a month and a $200 security deposit is more targeted at students who are within that bracket that we have here. So, yeah, that's really all I had.
What are you doing on snow removal? Because you're back parking, and if you build up something raised, I'm not sure where snow's going.
So there's a few snow removal companies. I know Brandon Reddick, personally, he has a snow removal company that we were going to look into him. We were going to see about a couple other places, but the snow removal company is pulling the snow out of there and having it really located were the options that we were looking at.
Okay. On your information that you supplied to us on the lease agreement, you had a couple conflicts. You mentioned visitors could do 3 days, but then someplace else I read in the same thing that they could have a week.
Yes. I think with notice, we were going to go with the 3 days is what we had decided on. And we would make those amends to it, of course, once we start actually looking for tenants and getting the inspections done. But with notice, just 3, so we have an understanding of who's in the house, and of course they could have them stay longer. Just we'd want to know if there's going to be more people for the parking reasons and stuff like that.
I had something else here. You'd mentioned that no pets, but in today's world, we have companion and or service pets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it's not. I was looking into that myself too, and that would be as a case-by-case basis. With communal livings, we're concerned with like making sure that everyone in the home is happy. But of course, if there's an emotional service animal or a service animal like that, of course that wouldn't be a problem. It would, if they need it, they need it, right?
And what if one of your people has a child? I didn't see anything that addressed anything about that.
Yeah. So with that, we were still kind of talking about different options. If there was maybe like with the upstairs, we were considering maybe having the smaller room. But if there was that extra child, that might take the space of a tenant. Because depending on what the planning commission decides, we might have a maximum of 5 persons allowed. But we would consider having children because there is the extra room up there, or they could have the child in the room with them for single parents. But we're open to that as well. It just really depends on what we're able to do, granted the special land use.
These are just some things I jotted down. Anyone else on board have a question here for Kelly before we open public hearing?
No, sir.
I was the only one loaded with questions. That's okay. Alrighty.
I also have some extra like of those parking diagrams with the whole house if you guys wanted them.
I think they have
You
copies.
got perfect. Okay.
Is that the-
Awesome. Well, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Also, I just want to mention, too, that there have been communications, written communications, which you're all in possession of.
Yes.
Some of them I've read. One of them was a little more detailed, and I did not have a chance to go through it in great detail. But I just wanted the public to be aware that you're in possession of all the written communications. And the other thing, too, as we think about going into the future in the new zoning ordinance, this application would not be able to be presented. It is now because we're still working with the current zoning ordinance. And we thought in the new ordinance that we would, boarding houses would only be allowed in greater than 50-foot lots. So we've got 2 new districts coming up, which is our single-family districts with 70 and 100-foot lots. And I think at the current time, and it could change when we bring it back to Planning Commission, But it's only in the 70-foot wide and 100-foot lots that the new ordinance is proposing that we would be able to consider boarding houses, just for your information.
Okay. Right, since we have a really large crowd, so before I open the public hearing, if everyone could kind of keep track of how long you're going to speak a little bit to be courteous so that everyone may, or if you hear the same thing coming up that just was spoken about, maybe back off. So key is I'm trying to give everybody an opportunity to say their piece, if you will. So at this time, I will go ahead and open the public hearing. I just ask you'll come to the center deal, tell us your name. There should be paper and pen up there, I think, if and just write your address down so for privacy reasons. But you can tell us your name.
My name is Pat Ponzak.
The microphone will pick you up, young lady.
I want to talk to these folks too.
Well, and that's,
You have to talk to us.
I can only talk to you?
well, we're
I guess you're the ones that we need to be talking to, aren't you?
you can talk to them anytime.
Everybody can hear you.
Okay. I live at 115 Iroquois, which is a city street in the city of Cadillac. I've lived in Cadillac for many years. My children all went to school in Cadillac, all graduated from Cadillac School. I take a great interest in Cadillac and Cadillac's well-being, and those of us who live in Cadillac, particularly those of us who chose to live in nice neighborhoods, in residential houses that were going to keep on being residential houses and not be rezoned for this, that, and the other thing for whatever special purposes come to the attention of either the Planning Commission or the City Commission, because a lot of things are entertained that seem to be not much in the interest of the individuals who live here, who work here, who support our community. So I used to live at 440 Chapin Street. That is the house immediately next door to this proposed house. It's the house up the hill. There is not this much space between my driveway and the neighbor's lot line. I can't even imagine where they're going to park as many cars as they're talking about. There will be no yard left. There's some issue with what they will do with pets. Well, there's no place for a pet to begin with, but there certainly won't be after they fill the place up with parking lot. I can't even begin to tell you how distressed I would be if I still lived in that house and I was going to have a boarding house next door to me with the backyard all given over to parking lots, pets maybe yes, maybe no, people coming and going. Residential neighborhoods, they should be residential, not commercial enterprises. Between boarding houses and now, I know we're not talking short-term rentals, but the short-term rentals that are owned from people downstate, they're rent to people here, they are not taking into consideration what the needs of our own people are. The people who live here, who work here, who look after us, the people who are our school teachers and our nurses and our gas station attendants. Nobody seems to care about them anymore. And I think this is a really bad idea. Signing off.
Thank you.
I can't write very well.
Well,
Good
that's
evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I had hand surgery less than 2 weeks ago, and my fingers are not working well. But I just want to say what I want to say.
You are who?
Joel Campbell.
Thank you,
I
Joel.
know you, John.
I was after that. I know that, but everybody else may not.
I'm sorry. All right. My name is Joel Campbell. I have lived at 409 Prospect Street in Cadillac for 47 years. Chapin Street is less than 1 block from my house. When I heard of the proposal to have a boarding house on Chapin Street, I could not believe it. This is very upsetting. Chapin Street is a family-oriented neighborhood with beautiful homes. If this can happen on Chapin Street, what is to prevent it from happening on my street? Basically, this could happen all over the city of Cadillac. My wife and I do not want a boarding house close to our home. This has an enormous potential to reduce the value of our home as well as the homes in and around the neighborhood. What kind of renters would be allowed at the boarding house? I see this as a huge problem of having drug abusers, sex offenders, or other dangerous situations occurring. The surrounding neighborhoods to Chapin Street are full of families with small children, and Franklin Elementary is only a few blocks away. This, in my opinion, is ridiculous and definitely not in the best interest of the welfare, safety, and security for all those involved. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Mills, and I actually live at 440 East Chapin, the house that Pat was just speaking about, directly next door. And she's absolutely right. There is not enough room. It is very, very tight space. And I was absolutely sick to my stomach. I haven't slept in nights, thinking about the prospect of a beautiful family home being transitioned into something that I believe would be for profit only upon the owner and not the tenants. If we are truly talking about something that is meant to be affordable housing and beneficial, I don't think this is the answer. And historically, the invention and implementation of zoning laws was a way to stop boarding houses, as they seem to be associated with urban decay. City began implementing zoning laws to limit the number of unrelated people that could stay in one particular space at a time, making most boarding houses illegal for a reason. Now, like I said, I believe that the only person a boarding house truly benefits is the owner financially. If our goal is affordable housing of a single dwelling, it's not currently zoned that way under its initial purchase. Zoning ordinance require the city to consider essential character of the area in which they are asking to grant variance. The character of Chapin Street is that of unique, charm, and family-oriented. I'm asking you to hear the voice of the community and deny this application, as I do not want any more traffic from people who are transient, who are in and out of our neighborhood, who don't have anything invested. I don't want to live near a boarding house. There is no historic charm that can be added from people in and out. A boarding house is not keeping in the value of where we currently live. For those of us in the neighborhood, we are wanting to feel safe, and I don't think anything transient makes us feel safe. The concerns with the kind of tenants that it would attract, even with background checks, is very concerning to me, especially as in her presentation it does say it would be open to recovering addicts, which leaves me nervous as I have small children. I also worry about the property and its maintenance, as I do believe that the owner will not be present in the state of Michigan, is my understanding. Boarding houses will have a negative impact on property value. People who want to invest in our block, I believe a boarding house will make it seem far less desirable. I also have looked into some research of boarding houses in more dense urban areas, typically is where they tend to be, and the average number of complaint phone calls for said boarding houses, particularly I'm citing for Philadelphia area, is 550 service calls in a per year in a boarding house similar to size. So I would like the commission to keep that in mind as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hi.
My name is Susan Somm, and I am not a long-term resident of Cadillac. I moved here a few years ago. Most people retire to Florida. My husband and I retired to Cadillac. We reside in the home right next door to this proposal. What's 430? Thank you, 430 East Chapin. Yeah, I don't know the zip code yet either. But I have a very unique experience to share with you. I come from, as you can tell from my accent, coffee, quarter. I come from outside New York City. I am probably the only person, maybe in this whole town, who has actually lived near boarding homes, or as we used to call them, flop houses. They are not a good experience for children. I grew up near them. People coming in and out every 3 months, that's a quick turnover. You don't get to know them. You're afraid of them because you don't get to know them. And there were many, many instances of problems that we were on a first-name basis with the cops in our town because they knew our address. There are too many things that have not been addressed in the proposal or in the things I've read of the Cadillac, whatever it's called, where you have the rules of housing and stuff. There are many, many concerns and issues that I didn't even see remotely written about there. I don't think that you can just jump into rezoning and doing a boarding home until you all have had the experience. Go visit a boarding home. Yeah, I'm talking mostly in cities, and I know you guys don't like to go to the cities much, but take a trip. You will find the residents around them that will express the concerns probably better than I am. I'm a little emotional because I didn't move here to move back near the problems that I escaped. I moved here to escape those problems. And you're ruining my dream, my retirement dream. Please don't do this. My husband's going to give you more details with regard to the parking and all the fancy stuff because he's an engineer. I was a nurse, so I do emotion, he does technical. The other issue I want to tell you, since I've been here, there has been flooding on my daughter's property on more than one occasion because there is drainage problems. And there is no way, I don't care what size car you have, that you're going to fit 4 cars back there. It'll take a magician, not an engineer. I'll let the engineer.
Thank you, Susan.
Hi, I'm John Horrigan. Moved here in '82, and I live in the neighborhood, and I moved there, because it was the family neighborhood, Franklin Elementary. Raised the kids. There were neighborhood kids all over. We all got older. Our kids left. The last 4 years has been wonderful. We've gotten families into the houses. We've got kids running around. It's a family neighborhood. It needs to stay a family neighborhood. As far as Baker College built the place at the old O'Neill office supply. It's empty. They built stuff out at the campus. And what they found is that most go to Baker commute. It's a commuter college. It isn't a residential. The other thing that concerned me is, as I read through every page of it, Kelly, is the site manager cannot evict or throw anyone out of that place. The only ones that can do it are the owners. And it's in your thing. It said they do not have the authority.
John,
Yeah.
kind of keep it to us,
Oh, okay.
please.
Anyway, that just concerned me. I won't get into the how it'll affect the things, but it's a family neighborhood. It is, and it always has been, and that's what it needs to stay. This does not fit. There are kids, there are families. We've got young new families there, and it's just exciting for me to see the other growth that's coming up with the young families in the neighborhood. Just isn't a good fit.
Thank you, John.
Hi there.
Hi.
My name is Laura Sherburne Marinelli. I recently, within the last 3 years, moved back to the Cadillac area after living in Pittsburgh, where I had a very different experience with boarding houses, being around a lot of students involved in a lot of community volunteer programs and things, and going into boarding houses with other people who volunteered like I did, and I thought they were a lovely thing. And I mean, I saw some of the bad ones in some of the areas of cities, but you're going to see that no matter what. And I had a unique experience of being a young person in Cadillac who did not have children, did not have a husband, and I was very much forced out of this town by a lack of housing options and a lack of good jobs too, which is why I moved. But I love the idea that there is a legal boarding house being proposed, as opposed to the situations I lived in, which I was young, which I'm a title examiner, so I kind of looked at the properties at which I used to live, and I was like, oh, those aren't zoned to be boarding houses, but they very much function that way. And we have lots of houses around this city where it's friends living together or mild acquaintances, one person subletting here and there is zero accountability. There is zero people looking in and making sure these things are being run correctly, whereas if you have a boarding house with a manager on site, you're avoiding a lot of the problems of drugs and police interaction and things like that. And I definitely think it's important to remember that just people with husbands and children or wives and children are not the only residents of this city. That the other people matter too. Young people exist, and they deserve the ability to have a safe and affordable home for them. And I was really excited when I first learned of this plan, and I would love to see young people not have the same experiences that I did when I was younger, or women forced into abusive relationships because they can't afford to leave and live in a house by themselves. So I thought it was a very well thought out plan. I think it's a great thing for the community, and I think it helps diversify, and it retains the integrity of the home, which you don't have with a lot of rental agreements. And we have tons of rentals, which are just as much, if not more so, for profit as a boarding house. There really is no difference. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Mark and Carolyn Leggett, we live on Stimson, right directly across the alley from the proposed. We bought our house in 2018. We retired here full-time a year ago. I echo the sentiments of most of the people in here about a boarding house in the neighborhood, but my point would be, evidently Cadillac has had some issues with zoning since the new zoning ordinance is being passed. What's the hurry to okay one now that will not work under the new ordinance? I would suggest that maybe the new ordinance, when it comes in, should be the landmark, not a hodgepodge of rules that you guys are trying to straighten out now. So, all emotion aside, I think it should wait and be brought up under the new rules and then a decision made, so you have more uniform code in the neighborhoods than just picking and choosing where one would go. So that would be my intake.
Thank you, Mark.
Didn't see all the people out back. Good evening. My name is Dan Salm, and I'm currently residing with my daughter, Catherine Salm, at 430 East Chapin Street. This is the house directly below the subject property. And as such, we are very concerned about drainage situations in the parking areas. I am a civil engineer. I have 40 years experience designing things like this. It is not going to fit 4 cars without a significant investment, if at all. I am concerned about snow plowing. Where are you going to push the snow? You have to be concerned about snow in northern Michigan. Okay? Other than that, I mean, I sent in prepared testimony already, and you have that. You are welcome to read it. Okay? And I think that about covers everything that we need to cover for right now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Jeff Martin. I live on Chapin, just across the street and down a few doors. I had a couple questions, primarily perhaps for the commission. One is, have you visited or checked out any other boarding houses in Cadillac and see how they're doing? Are we getting a lot of police calls?
John, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we have any.
I think we have one.
We think that there might be one boarding house in the city, and I have not had a personal experience with it.
One legal one, anyway.
There's many.
Okay, that just one question to see how they were doing in the town. The other thing is, we've lived there just short of 30 years, and up until just about 2 years ago, the house across the street and another house down a little bit were rental units that I'm aware of. And I can only think of one time in all those years where there was a fire department inspection of those rental units. So I'm just wondering, did I miss them, or are we not able to do those anymore?
No, as John mentioned, every 3 years I have rentals. That's why I'm going to speak. Every 3 years, yes, my units are physically inspected by our local fire department. And yeah, you may not be around when they show up. They pull up in a big fire truck. Can't miss them.
Yeah, apparently I wasn't around. And I agree with the gentleman about the holding off until the new zoning ordinances are put in place, rather than put that in place and then have to go make exceptions for all these ones we're doing now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone from the Outback audience? I don't know how to else phrase it, so.
Martin Dubrovic. We live a few doors down, and I just want to say, this is another potential example of a residential part of Cadillac being transformed from a residence to a rental neighborhood. We've worked hard to try and make our neighborhood one of residences and not multi-unit rentals. At one point a few years ago, we even had to deal with a proposal in our neighborhood to make our neighborhood part of a homeless shelter district. And I voiced my strong desire to maintain this property as a residence. This home was bought as a residence, not an apartment or a boarding house. And frankly, we're tired of our neighborhood, being heavily laden with this type of stuff that we have to deal with. If we want to enhance and maintain the quality of our neighborhood, then we need to keep, and I believe increase, the number of residential homes, not decrease them. And the shortage of housing in Cadillac, which, we all know there is one, should not be on the backs of us who have worked hard to try to enhance this part of Cadillac. And, especially for the neighbors, they bought into Cadillac, they bought their homes with the notion, with the idea, with the reality that they're buying into a residential neighborhood and not a rental neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi there.
Hello.
My name's Gwen Dubrovic. I'm at 406 East Chapin, and I agree this is a single family residence. That's how it was bought. They knew that was a residential zoning when they purchased the home, as are the majority of the homes right around there. It's almost a little duplicitous in my opinion. If they're buying a home under one premise and then they choose to switcheroo and come in and do something different that's not in the character of the neighborhood and not in the nature of the neighborhood, not in the best interest of the neighborhood, the kids or the families there. It's extremely concerning to everyone around, and it's not a home. to say one person might have a good transition housing experience. That's nice that one person did. The majority are not like that. The majority of them bring loads of problems, and they're not a home. So to say young people need to be welcome to a home is not 3 months, guys, right? So then what is it? If you're going to call it a home for 3 months, that's not a home. So there are some misnomers going on in saying in part of the rose-colored glasses of this can be a great experience for the town. No, it's going to pull the neighborhood down further. And it certainly when you have young people or single people that are looking for jobs, the jobs are on the north end of town. So you need to go where there is not residential area down there where you can put a halfway house or a transition home, things of this nature, where you aren't encroaching upon the single family homes, where now moms and dads have to watch even further when their kids go outside and who they're around and who's knocking on the door and, you know, cross the street to the other side or whatever as they go down, because who knows what they hear, see, or are approached by, you know, with going on in these homes. So it's completely not in the best interest of our residential neighborhood and all the people that have put in years of time and a lot of money into your town, our town, everyone's town here, to have that the carpet ripped out from under for a personal interest of a single person who is really a transition. It's not a home, it's a transition. And it's nice to help someone in transition more with social services and housing that's more accommodating around where there are jobs, like the factories. There's nothing wrong with a transition home right there on the edge of perhaps the factory zone so people can walk to work, because not everyone who is homeless or near homeless in a transition home has a car or a vehicle. That's where the jobs are, down there. Put it in an area where it's not, especially those that are in very compromised situations, many of them, to go into transition housing, right? So they're already compromised. They're not bringing an uplift of wholesomeness to the neighborhood. And of course, you want stability for them and a way for them to work and become productive members of society. But it's just not their home. And it shouldn't be everyone else has to go out of, you know, out of what the character of our community is to accommodate that, instead of helping them get a foot up in life and, you know, maybe they transition to their own real single family home down the road. That's what you hope for people if that's what they choose, or into a stable leased apartment where it is long-term living for them if that's their need down the road. But in the meantime, while they're transition, you know, that's not in the best nature of our property, our neighbor's property, of the whole neighborhood and town in general in that part of town. So I would definitely ask a vote for no, because it would be in the best interest of the owner. So the low income, you know, $600 a month times how many, 5 residents, that's a pretty good lease rate for Cadillac. So that to me looks like it's in the interest of the out-of-state owner, not our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. Hi.
Hi, my name's Joseph Roback. I was born in Cadillac on Park and Harris, lived there most of my life. And echoing Miss Marinelli's statement, I have also been in situations where I've had to stay at boarding houses before. Shortly after graduating, I had parents that were leaving the town. I was not able to leave with them. And I needed a cheap place to stay that was close to where I worked. And I did end up renting a room in a situation close to what Miss Dunseth is proposing with 4 other young men like myself. It wasn't in a legal sense, but that was 15 years ago. So, but it did help me a lot. I was able to be close to my job downtown. I was able to save money because I wasn't paying a lot in rent. And since then, myself and the other 3 gentlemen I lived with have all managed to improve our careers to the points where we are now prospective homeowners ourselves. And so we really appreciated that opportunity we had back then. And I think it would benefit the young people of this town like it did myself. I think Cadillac desperately needs more young people to come in and take over and positions of industry and leadership and things like that, and that would help people get better foothold. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. You were waiting.
Oh, I know. I'm
Patiently.
just nervous.
Okay.
Talking in big front crowd and everything. I'm Sierra Vaqueros. I live on the top of the hill on Chapin, and we've been living there for 4 years with our 4 children. And I love our neighborhood. I love our neighbors. I love that my kids can go outside. We're outside a lot all the time. They play out a lot. And I like that I can go out with my kids and I don't have to worry. And the alley does go right down on the back side of my house. So they got to come in and out from the back. And it is, concerning people that are coming in and out. Like we live there. These people are coming, it's just nervous that we don't know if they're going to respect how the things are going to be. So it's just a little nerve-wracking knowing that we are outdoorsy people. We're outside a lot with the kids. I know I have neighbors that say they love seeing my kids outside playing, that they enjoy seeing it because they are out a lot. My concerns are like I like that they want to help people, but like the other lady said, like, I don't know why they're not putting it where it's not so high traffic, because there's other kids that come right down my street from the school all the time that walk through. I'd like to see it be like the other lady said, like where the jobs are at, so they can get back and forth. I like the idea of them wanting to help people, but it's kind of like a little just nerve-wracking that being close to home, not knowing what the outcome's going to be. And then I've been told from the other house that already closed down, one of my coworkers live in that neighborhood, and it's kind of scary being told some of the stories that they've, that the people that lived in that neighborhood. So it's just a little nervous. You think I'm missing anything? I'm just nervous. Sorry, I'm not used to talking. I'm all jittery.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah.
You are. And thank you. Waiting patiently for those that are nervous.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate coming up, but I live directly across.
Your name, please.
Oh, Kristen Stillwell. I live directly across. I've been there about 11 years, I think, and one of the best things was the safety living directly across from retired police chief Matt Wolfile. So it would definitely be a change of the vibe in the neighborhood for sure. But I also have a perspective of, I worked 12 years at the Oasis shelter that's pretty close by. So I too want to help people, and I know a lot about the lack of the housing here and some of the obstacles that our population faces here. But I do know too, even having someone on site 24/7, it's not going to stop like police calls, drug addicts, anything like that. It sneaks by. So I just hope that all of that's kind of taken into consideration, that nothing's preventable, but having someone there isn't going to stop that kind of activity, especially in our residential neighborhoods. And I know we keep talking about young people, but I mean, there's all age groups. It affects everybody here, not just single adults. I saw from the cradle to the grave, like lots of age range, people working, people that don't have employment. And even if they had employment, getting to and from work was always an obstacle too if they didn't have transportation. Mental health services, all of that kind of stuff is taken into account. But I just wanted to add, I have two perspectives, living in that neighborhood and also working at a shelter. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. I knew I still had somebody. More than one.
My name is Terry Marquardt. I live over on Michigan Avenue. And I got some concerns too, not that I live in that neighborhood. But it's been a while, maybe 8 years ago on Kentucky Avenue. We brought in a transitional house that no one knew, and I don't know if it became before you people. But this is a house where 4 to 5 people live there, 24-hour care every 8 hours. New people come, new people watching these people. Some are from prison, some are mentally ill. There's a constant turnover. Our neighborhood, we have no idea who these people are, where they come from. Unfortunately, my son and my grandson live right next door to it. I talked to Mr. Coy when this first arose, and said, I just don't understand how they just end up in our neighborhood. Well, then, shortly after, there was another one up the street on Kentucky. And I kind of got investigative. I was a little nervous about this van that kept circling the neighborhood. This guy was in prison in Nevada, sexual offenses, went to Florida, sexual offenses, and then ends up on Kentucky Avenue. He's my neighbor. And so these transitional houses can be performed maybe, but not in residential areas. And one thing that really hurt me was a lady, we need childcare. A lady came in, corner lot on Michigan and Kentucky, was going to do a daycare. She was turned down because of this transitional house. And I hope you really consider some of these things with people coming and going like this. Like I say, these neighbors don't have a clue who's coming to this boarding house. I don't have a clue who's at this transitional house. But I can tell you what, you've wore out at least one police car on Michigan or on Kentucky Avenue because they're almost every day. We've had incidents, people saying, "Run me over, kill me." We call the police. One lady strips down naked, running down the street. They have to arrest her. Other people, it's just been ongoing, unreal. And when I talked to Mr. Coy years ago, he says, "I'll tell you what, if there's a lot of problems, they'll be gone." There's tons of problems. You can check with your local police department. I think they're there almost all the time. And for real estate values, do you think if my son went to sell his house, how appealing is it to you when you pull up to look at the house you're interested in and there's 3 police cars here? And it's ongoing. And there's got to be a place for these people, but it can't be in residential areas. Not in my beliefs. And I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I just had to come up and tell you this.
Is what you're telling us still running?
Yes, it is, at full capacity. And the sad part is you kind of get to meet a few of them walking. They walk back and forth to the Dollar General and stuff. Some you don't want to talk to. Some I feel a little disappointed. I know they've got a disability. But then all of a sudden, there's new people here again. And they're coming from downstate in different areas, but we have no clue who they are. And the people that are taking care of these people, they have an 8-hour shift. So at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock, he's waiting for the next guy. He's out there, got the radio cranking, and exhaust going, loud. Some are quiet, some are loud. But it's a nonstop revolving thing. And at the point when this first started, my grandson was 8 years old. He was told, stay in the backyard. One of the neighbors said, one of the guys over there has got a serious problem, and he's really eyeballing your kid. What do you do? I mean, it was a tough one. And, I appreciate you people hearing me. I don't know how that trans house was allowed there to begin with, and it was sold to another guy. And it is a moneymaker, of course. It's I got to believe it's a good moneymaker, but I just hope that we don't repeat these problems. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Hi.
Good evening. I am Catherine Solm. I am the owner of 430 Chapin Street and the daughter of the engineer and nurse you heard from.
Hey.
First, I have a question is what happens if the manager quits? Who's going to be overseeing the building? My concern, you've heard from multiple parents who have young children in the area. I am one of 3 immediate neighbors to that house who have teenagers who are, if there are transient tenants coming in and out of that house, I have significant concerns about former drug users or the history of these tenants around my teenage daughter and the other teenagers in the neighborhood and what kind of impact that will have on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Hi, I'm Andy Van Alst. We have zoning, right? We have zoning in town right now. We're not looking to we're looking at maybe doing something with it, but we have zoning right now in town, and that's zoned single family. So, seems like an easy decision. They have multifamily down the street. Like, I think that goes up like the first couple blocks of off of Mitchell. Seems like a more appropriate area for that. But my concern, you know, I very outspoken about short-term rentals, and so I go, what if they called the house next to me a boarding house? You know, that also is zoned residential, single family, but it would be in the new zoning, RE 50 or RE 70 or RE 100, which, if John's saying that right, would make it okay to put it in my neighborhood. So I'm not a big fan of the new zoning ordinance either. I think it's scary. I think the whole zoning ordinance is scary. I think that the proposed zoning ordinance, we have an existing one. The updates for now are why? Why now? So anyways, the issue at hand of the boarding house, I don't understand what a boarding house is. I lived in that neighborhood going to kindergarten. We'd go go-karting down the street and riding sleds in the alley. And how would that be? I mean, it might have changed my life if I bumped into a recovering addict. It could have saved me a lot of trouble. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Andy. Everybody good? I'm not trying to rush anybody. I'm trying to just not be here all night. That's all.
Would I be allowed to speak to answer some more questions that were addressed, or I don't know if everyone's done, of course.
Do I have to shut it down to do that? Okay. So you can respond to questions. I will close the public hearing. And then, Kelly, you are more than happy to come up and address those questions. So at this time, I'm closing public hearing. Nobody else can come back up front here and ask anything when I do this, okay? So that's done. Down. And Miss Kelly.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate your input. A couple questions I heard that I just want to address that I can while I'm here. We vet our applicants. We're going to be very careful about putting people in there. I want to make it aware that even if this wasn't a boarding house, there's going to be renters in there that you can't always anticipate the problems they may cause. By having the control that we do with this type of housing, we can avoid those exact same concerns by having someone on the premises. My number, my personal number, as well as the number to the manager, would be available on the outside of the building, so anyone with any issues could get a hold of us. I mean, the fact is, it's a residential area, yes, and this is a residential type of housing. This is meant for Cadillac residents, not just, you know, lower income people or recovering addicts. We want to do what's in the best interest to help the residents of the home that would live there. And anyone who would be dangerous or using drugs would be immediately evicted from the home. The manager does have permission to evict with our consent, but all it would take is a phone call just to tell us what had happened. And on the grounds of anything illegal, of course, the police would be called immediately and they would be removed within the limit of time. But that's something you're not going to get away from no matter what type of rentals you do, because that's just the people. Like, we would make sure that we get good people living in a communal environment, but we can only do so much because we're renting to the residents of Cadillac ultimately. And the manager isn't being charged rent either, so it's for paying rooms and we haven't set the price ultimately. We were considering around like $600. We're not even making over what we would make in my mortgage. Like, I'm paying for the utilities, we're paying for everything else, we're supplying internet, stuff to help these people. It's not for profit. I just really want to make that understood. Like, my heart is in this town, and I really want to be able to come back and be here and be a part of the community as well. The last thing is that if the manager were to quit, I would definitely be back myself if that were to happen. It takes me an hour or two to get here on a plane. I would be back and I would be taking care of myself until we found someone that was appropriate to take over the position. But we would do our due diligence in making sure that everyone in there would be a respectable member of the community, because it is a residential area and we want to keep it that way. Thank you.
Question, Kelly.
Yeah.
Is the house manager there 24/7, or is he or she, whoever, going to have a job and they leave during the day?
We're still looking at different applicants for the manager. I'm staying until we find the perfect fit. Ideally, it would be someone who is there, more often during the day so they could answer any problems. But in part of their contract, it's that they have to be reachable for any complaints to not only the residents of the home, but the neighboring communities as well. It's not zoned for a boarding house, but it says in the city code that this is allowed with a special use. It's in the code already. It's a needed commodity, and I think it would do good. Thank you, guys.
Anybody else on our board before Kelly sits? We're all good. Thank you. Okay. Yes,
I'd like to
sir, Mr. Wallace.
Clarify one point. I heard people mention the word rezoning. There is no rezoning going on with this. When a use is listed as special use, allowed by a special use permit, it generally means that it's generally not incompatible with the surrounding uses, and you can agree with that or not agree with it, but that's what it usually means in the context of zoning. But what it also means is that there may be some element of that use that needs to be addressed with site conditions or other conditions to make it more acceptable, and otherwise they could have allowed it by right. But they recognize it's generally compatible, but might need some tweaking or something to happen to make it more compatible. So in what we're doing with the new ordinance, someone alluded to the fact that the new ordinance is worse than the old. It's actually the current ordinance of the old ordinance, which is more permissive than what the new ordinance would be. So I just want to clear that up.
Thank you, John.
May I ask a question?
Go.
May I?
You? Yes,
Oh,
please.
John, what section of the zoning ordinance actually defines boarding house or rooming house or whatever this actually is?
Well, it'd be the definition section.
I can't find that phrase anywhere, so I'm...
Is that in reference to Mike Coy's letter by chance?
No, I'm just trying to figure out
Well, because Mike
what it
put
is.
down some ordinance stuff.
Well, he did, but not on this issue.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah, rooming house, I'm sorry.
Please.
Rooming house under the existing zoning ordinance means, so it's not under boarding house, that might be why it's hard to find this under rooming house. Means any dwelling unit or part of any dwelling containing one or more rooming units in which space is let by the owner to 3 or more persons not in immediate family. When rooms are let to less than 3 persons, the dwelling must comply with the requirements of a single-family dwelling unit unless otherwise required in this code. The term rooming house shall not include a bed and breakfast, hotel, motel, or other transient uses less than 30 days.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Related to 747 sub 2, related to the number of parking spots required, does 2D require 2 spots per unit, or am I misreading that?
Which section are you in?
747 sub 2 sub D? And I may be misconstruing.
A general residence requires 2 spaces. There is no specific requirements for parking as it relates to rooms being let. The zoning ordinance addresses, like single family, it addresses multifamily, but I don't believe it has an entry for individual rooms.
So this
and the special use permit has the ability for the planning commission to control number of vehicles on the site.
For the sake of argument, at least, this is a multifamily use, right?
Well, I think if I can jump in, John, a multiple family in the zoning ordinance is defined, or multiple family dwelling is defined as a building or portion thereof designed exclusively for occupancy by 3 or more families living independently of each other. And you would not have 3 families. You'd have 3, by definition, 3 unrelated individuals, 1 to a room.
So is this, by definition, a single-family use, then?
I believe yes.
Okay. Related to, this is the COI letter, the alley, 660, 46-660 appears to require on a 90-degree turn to a parking spot at least 20 feet of turning area, and the alley being 12 feet wide.
Again, I don't think those issues are applicable in this particular case. It's not a multifamily development with its own circulation aisles, and the balance of this block are, again, single-family homes, which has generically allowed parking on most of the lots on the block.
Well, how, am I wrong that it's a 90-degree parking pattern and would have a maneuvering lane width of 20?
It is 90-degree parking, yes.
Okay. So 12 feet is, I'm sorry to be silly about this, but 20 feet is more than 12, right? I mean, is the alley 12 or 20?
Well, I don't believe it's applicable here.
Why not?
Well, how would 8 or 9 houses have 90-degree parking on a 12-foot alley if it were not permissible?
Well,
and they all would have had to get policy directives from the city engineer or the DPW for a curb cut permit.
Well, for the sake of argument, this is one house that we're being asked to issue a special land use permit for. So, I mean, you could argue.
Well, I guess my short answer is I don't think it's applicable.
Okay. Very good.
Any other board questions, comments?
I've got a comment whenever you're ready for it, but I'll let other people.
Okay. Mayor?
Well, obviously, we've heard a lot from the neighborhood,
I agree.
so that says a lot
Yep.
to me.
I understand those words. Neighbor showed up. David, good-ish? Okay.
I think it's a complex decision.
Oh, it is.
Anyone can hear you guys.
Very much so complex, yes.
I think it's a complex decision,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure that we're going to be able to explore all the options and all the details right now.
Well, then based on that comment, we'd be open to table, which John presented at first if we did not feel we had enough information, but
I don't think that's the answer.
I don't think that's the
I'm
answer.
sensing other things here.
So what is your
So,
comment?
well, my comment is a little broader. I think I disagree with staff in that I think existing ordinances, regardless of what was previously grandfathered, are applicable, especially when it's a special land use. It's my personal opinion. I think that among those issues is a reason to deny the request. Additionally, 46-747 notes, as staff did in the staff report, that for his opinion, some cases, for the most part, I believe, however, that this change would not be harmonious with the surrounding area, would change the essential character of the single-family community. I question the general enjoyment of the adjoining properties, simply without regard to who is in there. That's when I want to make this decision, I don't want to judge who is or who is not going to be there. I can understand how one would, and I'm trying to separate it from myself. And the sheer density, number, and change is why I will vote to reject the request.
I would like to, first of all, agree with Commissioner Baumann, but I would also like to say how much I appreciate the thought behind this desire to ask for this special permit. Housing is one of our #1 priorities, and the shortage of housing. There are a lot of people coming together to try to work on the answers to this problem, the shortage of housing. At the end of this week, I'll be in Traverse City for 3 days at a housing summit. This topic is huge, but I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you for being willing to ask. No matter how this ends up, we all have to be thinking about how can we make a difference and how can we get this housing in place. There's no right or wrong answer, but I think we all need to work together, agree to disagree, and come up with something that is going to work for our community, for everyone. So.
Yes, agreed.
What I'm hearing is folks concerned about not knowing who is coming into the neighborhood. That I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and especially if it's folks coming in from here, there, and everywhere, and they're moving into your neighborhood, regardless of how long they stay, that certainly is a degree of insecurity in folks who live in an area and perceive what they have now as being the way it ought to stay. I also agree with the fact that housing is a huge issue, and it's something that's going to take a lot of time and effort to get to. The other thing, just from a logistical point of view, the parking spot, I mean, I drove by there today, and there's not much room without a fair amount of development, it seems to me. So that's something that needs to be addressed and taken care of before we even move into talking about whether this should be approved or not. There needs to be other things in place. Plus, I want to see how the zoning that is being worked on, which is not settled by any means, how that is going to affect a decision. Whereas this one, it's a special use, but in the long run, as it has been mentioned, how is the total zoning going to affect how we make these decisions in the future? So, those are my concerns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I would like to say one thing. You know, I've been on this commission for a year, and this is by far the most participation I've seen, and I'll give you guys credit for showing up and having the guts to do it because it's something you care about. And don't do it when it's just your home. Do it when it's other things. You know, we like hearing from you because it's what we need. We need to know.
We need to know.
So always have the guts to say what you feel. If you believe in it, show up here and say something.
Correct.
Thank you.
If you want to take it and run.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to reject the request for the special land use permit.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Just a question.
Yes.
Laura, would they have to relate that back to the special
we need more
standards in
than-
the ordinance?
Yeah, I would recommend discussing these standards that I think sorry.
Joe or Bauman.
Bauman,
Yes.
sorry, I think it was right on the tip of my tongue. That Councilmember or Planning Commissioner Bauman talked about in his comments, going to those standards in section 46-747-1, the general standards. Probably a discussion of those in your deliberation would be
Agreed.
appropriate and included in the minutes.
Could I? Nobody's transcribing, so nobody could just take my
No, you have to
previous.
talk about them again now.
During my motion or
Yes.
following the second? I'm questioning whether you need a change motion or discussion.
I think it's just important to have in the record
Okay.
the reasons for that, so
All
we
right.
discuss them as part of your deliberations.
Wonderful. Mr. Chair, my basis for my motion is the general standards as outlined by council under 747 related to the harmonious nature of this use with the surrounding area associated with density and volume of individuals, cars, traffic. Secondly, the change that I believe will affect the essential character of the single-family community and neighborhood. Thirdly, I question the likelihood and ability for those around this facility or, property to continue the general enjoyment of their property. And perhaps most importantly, but most ambiguously, whether this use will improve the character of the property, and I believe it will not.
Very good. Is that enough for this stuff? Yes, okay. Okay.
Ready for a vote?
Abby, please.
Rice,
Nay.
Bauman,
Aye, yes.
Filkins,
Aye.
Bunce,
Aye.
Host,
Aye.
and Putvin.
Yes.
Rice is confused.
Are you voting yes or no to the motion?
He's supporting
State the motion again.
Motion to reject.
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That's all right, we're going, but that's okay.
And it is unanimous.
That's okay.
You get to surprise us.
Okay. We thank you all for showing. We're not used to it. You're welcome to stay and listen to our other stuff.
We're not done.
You have to come over and look at We're in a public meeting, guys. There's more on the agenda.
I'm glad to see people make a decision.
You're welcome to leave or stay.
And down the road until there isn't anybody here to say yay or nay. So, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Mark.
It's just a informational meeting. There's nothing being decided.
We got stuff.
We got stuff?
Somebody's gonna.
I'm gonna move the table, all this stuff. This is so hot in here. It's sweating my tail off. Well, I guess that's true. What he said. I mean, it's just a vest. My arms aren't chilly.
He said that when he came in and sat down, and I go, but you got your vest on.
I think it
Yeah,
deserves.
and Joe, I was outside, and I had.
I was comfortable outside.
I know. The scope of what we're doing right now, there needs to be a lot more communication.
That's why I think that's why I think it needs a little more attention.
Education. That area, when I looked at it, shit is crammed just
It's tough.
It's tight. They can keep trying. They need just as much money. So it's not.
Okay, giving everyone an opportunity that wanted to leave, do so. We have some new business this evening, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what it says. So we have Community Development Director report on short-term rentals. That must come right back to you, John.
Yes.
Sure does.
Okay.
You've probably all been following short-term rentals in the paper, and I know the chairman has attended the public forums that we've had. I don't know how many other members have attended, but in the near future, we'll probably be bringing some draft language to the commission. And I thought prior to having to force any decisions on where, when, how many, any of that thing, that it might just be beneficial to start learning about short-term rentals and how there's different kinds and all the different impacts, positive and negative, that occur with them, and why we're seeing such a diverse opinion in the community. We have gathered a lot of data, which eventually we'll be presenting to you both at the 2 forums that we held, and also we did an online survey, about a little over 400 responses, with about 200 of those coming from city residents. But we're not done, and we're still gathering information. All the information that we've gathered is certainly going to help guide where we go with this. But I thought it'd be beneficial just to get used to some of the terms and some of the impacts, just to start getting familiar with it, and perhaps maybe even allow you to do some of your own research online. Or some cities are very involved in this, others are not at all involved in it. One of the cities I happen to notice is doing a lot with short-term rentals is South Haven, Michigan. Of course, it's a much different community than we are in terms of being more heavily tourism-based. However, looking at a lot of their material, I've been learning a lot about the subject. But what is a short-term rental? Originally, we were starting out calling it less than 90 days. Through the process, I think we're down to the point now where we're calling it less than 30 days. And one of the main reasons for that is the fact that there's a lot of long-term leases where people are going month to month when those leases expire, and we probably have a lot of cases of those happening in the community. I don't know what the current percentage is, but in the last census, we were at 46% rentals out of our single-family housing stock in the community, and I think it's gone down. I'm not sure exactly how much, but we've been a community where we've had a lot of single-family properties that have been rental, whether that be for short-term rentals or whether that be for long-term rentals. That's been the case. And I think it is changing, and I think we are seeing a little bit less of our percentage of housing stock being rented. But for the purposes of going forward, I think we're looking at housing units or rooms that are being rented for less than 30 days. Right now, the City of Cadillac zoning ordinance does not have short-term rentals mentioned specifically in the zoning ordinance. I issued a memo in 2021, and using other land uses that are allowed within the zoning districts, I said if I have to use the existing ordinance to say where they're allowed, I determined at that point in time, based on the other uses that would be permitted of a similar nature, that they would be permitted in the TS1, TS2, B1, and B2 zoning districts. So that's kind of where we've had the first benchmark of saying what the city zoning has to say on the subject. But the current ordinance does not mention short-term rentals by name. At one of the recent council meetings, there was a request to process an amendment to essentially codify this memo, and which means to, I guess, put wording into the current ordinance, which basically states what my memo had stated, to, I guess, make clear what the current policy is on short-term rentals, just to have a clear starting point for what the law is right now within the zoning ordinance. Some things that short-term rentals are not: they're not hotels, resorts, bed and breakfasts, boarding houses, transitional houses, group homes such as adult foster care homes or mental health facilities. Sometimes people can start to confuse those with those other types of rental situations. What we've experienced a lot in the city is basically your non-hosted short-term rentals, which essentially means that the owner is not present on the site. An entire house is rented, and that house might be trying to be rented out year-round. I mean, short-term rental year-round, or it could also be that somebody uses it for their own vacation home, uses it for a portion of the year, might even be a week or a month, and wants to pick up additional revenue, and then can rent it out for some additional period of time during the year to, I guess, offset the expenses with having a vacation home. And then you have the hosted short-term rentals, which I don't know. I haven't heard a lot that we have this situation in town. We may have it. Maybe it goes unnoticed. And this is a situation where you might lease out a spare bedroom or two to someone looking to just have overnight or 2 or 3 day accommodations. And I think some cities, they deal with these issues dramatically differently, and those are some of the issues that we have to sort out. I think it's probably the non-hosted short-term rentals that we're probably having the most issues with, which I'll get into in just a little bit. Yeah, the traditional leisure vacation rentals, again, they're non-hosted home lodging options on lakefront properties typically or other tourist areas. These are properties which are rented out for the entire year. They are either professionally managed or owner managed. It could be either one. They provide whole home lodging options with kitchens, separate living areas, and typically have washers and dryers. These types of units are typically favored by small groups of people or large families where it doesn't fit to lease out multiple hotel rooms or something of that nature. And very similarly, you have the traditional leisure vacation rentals, which basically is the same thing, only there's a period of time that the owner is there that the unit is not being leased out, and that might be any period of time. But generally, I'm getting the sense that the owner is only using it somewhere between a week and a month out of the year, although it could be longer. And the primary residence is basically just like I had said earlier. It's just the renting out of surplus bedrooms and giving someone a chance to experience more of the residential flavor of the city, and if those homes might be near the downtown or something of that nature, gives them a chance to experience more of the flavor of the city. Just to give you some idea how big it's expanded, I did find a graphic that identifies all the different services, and that's why enforcement on short-term rentals is so difficult, is because people can float their ads across all these different platforms, and it's really quite a challenge. We have been talking to a firm that facilitates enforcement with local units on short-term rental, and basically they have the ability to connect with 30 different websites where people share their rental data, so they can report back to the city the addresses or short-term rentals that they found in the city, and then the city can determine if that location is illegal or legal, and act accordingly on enforcement, or just making sure if they get brought into the rental inspection program for the city, so that there is some certainty that these units are being inspected for basic conditions for the units. Thinking about it differently, there's advantages and disadvantages, and we'll talk about some of those. The advantages of short-term rental for property owners obviously contributes to local wealth if they're owned locally. Prevents economic hardship and displacement if you are, say, doing a hosted situation, and maybe you're close to meeting your ongoing expenses but fall a little short. It could give somebody additional income to stay in place within their unit. For people who own a vacation home, it allows them to make extra income. And the thing to think about with all these, too, is it affects all the other variables. A lot of people will criticize short-term rentals as taking a house out of the year-round housing stock. Well, that won't happen in the cases of a vacation rental where the owner is wanting to use that for some period of time because they can't deal with evicting a year-round tenant to make use of their home. But in other cases, it's certainly very much the case where a home that might have been very suitable for year-round rental is taken out of the market. And that's why you have to look closely at what's happening in each of these situations. It also has a higher income than long-term rentals, so if you're considering doing one or the other, depending on what the regulations are, it certainly has the potential for higher income. Generally, the preservation of property is enhanced over a long-term rental, and the reason for that is that a lot of these services rate both the owner and the tenant. Both the tenant and the owner get rated, and if you cease to maintain your property, then you get a bad rating, and hence you don't see as many rentals for your facility because it's put right out there online for everybody to see. And community promotion through promoting tourism. As I mentioned earlier, there's a number of people when they travel, they don't tend to go to places where hotels don't work well for them. And that's usually when they're in small groups or large families is the two areas that mostly happens in. So it does offer another option to bring in some tourism that wouldn't otherwise be here if they were restricted only to hotels. Benefits of short-term rentals for the renters themselves. In many instances, there are money savings for them, an opportunity to live in a temporarily furnished home, in your own temporarily furnished home, fully equipped kitchens, more space and privacy, more intimate local experience, provides both tourists and hosts with valuable social and cultural exchange, and they tend to work better for our families in small groups, which I have mentioned. Benefits to the city, support of tourism, provide more authentic local Cadillac experience. A lot of people having a good experience in the city can report that again online, saying good things about the city, hopefully. Increase market exposure, create a hospitality image for the city, increases supply and diversity of visitor accommodation, and provides needed capacity for peak seasons and major events. Then on the flip side, it's not all benefits and fun. There are a lot of issues that you have to consider, and again, these issues may be more or less depending on the type of short-term rentals we're talking about, and that mostly falls between the hosted and the non-hosted. We have had reports of noise, loud parties, difficulty in enforcement of regulations, parking problems, and that might be with passenger and recreational vehicles, the potential to change a quiet residential character in a neighborhood, at times lack of an on-site management, lack of knowledge on the rental tenants, reduction in long-term rentals in some cases. It can serve to drive up local rents. It can incentivize property owners to keep rooms vacant or even evict long-term tenants in order to make higher profit. It's a very real potential. And adversely impact community cohesion. So there's a lot of issues that both help and hurt. And whatever we end up doing, we'll be balancing a lot of different issues. And it's a very challenging subject, as you'll find. I did find a nice website that talked about the basic components of a short-term rental ordinance. And they recommended that, number one, that we establish clear definitions in the ordinance, require registration and record keeping, establish protections for the supply and affordability of housing, create protections for the well-being of guests, establish oversight, complaint, and sanction procedures for the well-being of neighbors, and preserve neighborhood quality. And there's any number of ways that you might choose to try to address those components, but they felt that all of those should be in there. I did have a chance to talk to one of the enforcement officers for the city of South Haven. They have 2 full-time short-term rental officers, and they said clearly if you're going to get into short-term rentals, that you're likely going to want to have an enforcement officer. That's been their experience. Their system is incredibly different from here. They've divided the city up into about 5 quadrants, and they've identified all the short-term rentals, and it might range from 40 units in one sector to 200 units in another sector. So they're very heavy into it, and that's probably why they have 2 enforcement officers. But it's going to be different in every community, and the goals that you're trying to set for yourself, they have to be set in the right balance, and that's the challenge that we have ahead of us. We certainly do have a year-round housing issue, so we certainly don't want to do short-term rentals to the extent that average houses that would be very suitable for year-round housing would fall into into the case of being short-term and just being off the market. I think we want to make sure that we clearly don't do that. And there's also issues too where sometimes out-of-state people or investment groups, depending on where you're at, will want to come in and buy up a number of houses just to turn it into a money-making venture. And I've been looking into more, and perhaps on the legal side we can look into this. I think there are some cities who are looking at the type of ownership and whether it's local or whether it's not local, so that we're not setting up a system here where money's being made from non-local people or out-of-state people taking advantage of the city. And so we want to make sure that we do that. So there's going to be a need to come up with just the right balance. The other issue that we also need to be concerned about is that, you know, there's been continued efforts year after year to have the state take over control of short-term rentals. And I think we want to not have a lot of short-term rentals here, but at least look like we're being fair so that we don't add fuel to the fire that Cadillac's not used as an example why the state should usurp local units. There's a lot of issues to be balanced, and trying to work through that's going to be difficult. Obviously, if you've been at the previous ones, we've attempted to put out options, and I don't think we're to the point where we're happy with those options at this point. And it might be a situation where we might start over with the Planning Commission, briefing you on where we've been, but also then getting your input on where you think that we should be going with the topic, but making sure that we try to gather enough information so that we feel that we know enough about how all the effects work both ways, and balance between protecting neighborhoods, promoting tourism, making the city seem like it's a hospitable place to visit, all those different things. How do we do that in the right balance? So that's kind of what's ahead of us. So I just thought I would just start talking about those things. And if, you know, when it's going to come forward, you might want to take some time, look into what other cities are doing, focus on hosted, non-hosted kinds of situations, and start getting your own thoughts together on where you think we ought to be. We have another item on the agenda. Kathy Moran was supposed to speak. She was not able to make it tonight, but we do have a handout. She has, I think, they have a contract with a company where they get short-term rental data, and she's provided you with a handout which shows short-term rental locations and a lot of other associated data with the income that's being made from short-term rentals. I was hoping she could be here tonight to walk you through some of that, but we may invite her back at a future meeting and have her talk a little bit about the data that they can generate from the service that they're buying at this point in time.
So John, I have a question. There's been a lot of, we've had the public forums as a means of educating folks. There's been a lot of discussion and concern outside of what I understand the process to be. And so my question for you this evening is, when can we get this? I mean, we haven't met as a planning commission since May. So when is this conversation going to come to the planning commission so we're in the middle of all of those discussions? Does that make sense?
You mean the timing of it?
Yes.
I would probably say within the next 2 months.
Okay.
And of course, we'll generate all the data that we've created. Of course, people react to it differently. I think we made a good faith effort to model our survey after other cities that were doing similar studies. We've also been coordinating with local townships who are aware of our survey, and we've provided them with what we have done, and I think they're all looking into it as well. Do you want to speak to some of the conversations with the townships, Abby?
Yeah, so I've spoken with Cherry Grove Township several times, and Selma. They are the ones that have control over the other lake, Lake Mitchell. And so I believe Cherry Grove Township is going to be doing their own survey. They did get our questions and results in order to kind of look at it as reference as they're referencing other surveys. And they're willing to share that data with us as well. We've asked that when they complete that, let us know what their community, because we are very close and may get some similar residents to speak with us. And then we've also spoken with Selma Township, and we've referred them both to go speak to the Visitors Bureau because they do have some great information here that spans the whole region. So as you guys look through this packet, just make sure you kind of look at the headers because it states certain of this data is specific to Cadillac itself, and some is the greater area, including like Lake City, Manton, Mesick, all of that.
Yeah, and some of the entries for Cadillac are the Cadillac zip code, so it might be a little bit broader than just the city of Cadillac. But in mind just glancing at their maps that they were able to provide, it seems like there's more short-term rental happening on Lake Mitchell than on Lake Cadillac.
Better be.
The money some of them are pulling in is quite impressive. So if you look at some on Lake Mitchell, some of the stats that she shared with you, they're making some good money.
Does anybody have any questions, basic questions on any of the types of rentals or?
I've been at stuff, so I've been listening to it to stay on track. So yeah, I'm good. Obviously, Joe was there during one, so he got his feet wet also, and Mr. Bosher was there. So a few of them, and the mayor. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Just hit me. Remind me you're there. No.
And I guess one thing to keep in mind too is that a lot of the problems we're having it right now is that we did not have short-term rental regulations on the books other than location, so we had no vetting of making them go through any kind of process to review whether they were going to have parking problems or whatever. Right. So I think the amount of problems we've had is probably greater than we would have had we been set up to address short-term rentals.
Yep.
Because there would have been some vetting. Not to say it would have solved all the problems, because it wouldn't, but I think we're seeing the worst case scenario now because there was simply no vetting of any of the cases where it's going on right now. And we are working on enforcement of the current zoning law, and maybe Laura, you could speak to a little bit about what we're doing on the enforcement side.
Sure. We've been working closely with staff and with council's, city council's direction, sending enforcement letters to short-term rentals that are operating in violation of the current zoning ordinance. We have filed 2 lawsuits. For one of those lawsuits, the property owner sold the house and the use ended, so the lawsuit was dismissed, but we have advised the new owner in writing of the previous litigation and that short-term rentals are not permitted there. In the other lawsuit, we are negotiating the terms of a consent judgment to put a stop to that as well.
Very good. Because that was one of the huge complaints, that thing was enforcement. But it's good.
And it is a challenge. As Laura can attest, you have to have a certain amount of evidence. You got to go through an evidence collection phase, and that can be copying their posts online and these different services and so forth, being able to take photographs and different things. And you want to have a good case if you're going to go to court. But that's all I have on that issue. Just wanted to kind of create an introduction to it.
Okay, if I may pause briefly, I have a member that has to leave. If I'm going to give him the window to do that.
Sorry to leave early.
No, you're good. Thank you, Joe. Okay, old business, there's nothing. Board member comments? Board members? Good. Good?
Good.
I did walk down Diggins Hill Friday night, seen all the activity in David's backyard there with the
They're not done
cars
yet.
and trunks and candy being held out and stuff. They seem to have an awesome turnout. Anyway,
Yeah.
looked like a lot of fun was had. Anyway, communications, we already have those, I think, sir.
Yes.
Public comments. We'll give y'all an opportunity and say Happy Halloween. I don't care. Thanks, Joe. Okay, there being no other business and stuff, we're good. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Close it